Let me just start off with a quick overview of what we have, and this disclaimer, I think is very important. We're right in the middle of this investigation. We're still doing interviews. There's a lot for us yet to determine. And I know that oftentimes in the fog of initial statements, we don't have all the facts exactly right. I'm going to do the very best I can. There is some data, information that I won't be able to release today, but I think you'll have a very good feel of what happened early this morning. At 12:39, the Martin County Sheriff's Office became aware that there was a stolen vehicle on High Meadows Avenue in Palm City. Supervisors immediately transmitted to road deputies not to turn on emergency lights. The reason we do that now is we have a different methodology. We have an air unit that we knew was available, and we know from experience that on these stolen vehicles coming into our county, most often they don't stop and just create quite the hazard. So our methodology has really become quite refined. Once we become alert to the vehicle, we don't cause them to begin to run, and we use our air units to keep an eye on the vehicle. At 12:42, about 3 minutes later, the aviation units did pick up that vehicle on 714 Martin Highway, and the vehicle was running at excessive speeds. And I think that's important because without any lights being turned on, the vehicle was already traveling at a very high rate of speed. The aviation unit followed from 714 to Indian Street, so it continues eastbound. Martin Highway becomes Indian Street once you go over the bridge, and then you hit US 1, turned right, goes south. The vehicle did that and traveling at a high rate of speed. Will release video, blowing one light after the other. Aviation unit advising that he almost caused an accident. I heard that a couple times. He may have said it more often than that. Through this entire incident, there were no police blue or red lights activated. We were following that vehicle from the air, and I would tell you this, that car could not have known that aviation was overhead. Our aviation unit can hang back, and they wouldn't have known that. They still drove at extremely high rates of speed. The vehicle hit Cove Road and turned west. When it did that, we had a marked unit on the northwest corner of Cove and US 1, and when he looked up, he saw the vehicle going from southbound US 1 to westbound Cove, but he took the turn so fast he went westbound in the eastbound lane. So at that point, our unit did activate his blue lights and red lights, hoping to warn any traffic coming eastbound that there was a car westbound in their lane. The vehicle did not stop at all and continued running at a high rate of speed. Our units, of course, knowing that the aviation unit was overhead, immediately cut those lights off and realized the vehicle wouldn't stop. The vehicle continues westbound on Cove Road, extremely high rates of speed, goes to Willoughby, no slowing down, total disregard for anybody working a midnight shift who may have been coming home or going to work. At Gaines Avenue, our road patrol units had been stationed. They deployed tire deflation device. The vehicle appears from the video to have hit those devices and continues west for a short distance. And instead of turning left on Caner Highway to go west out towards I-95, just went straight on through the intersection, plows over the curb, plows through the trees, plows through the underbrush, I don't know, 100, 200 yards, goes right into that riverway there of the South Fork. You can see it on the video, which we'll release. The car submerges. 2 occupants are seen clearly on the video swimming to shore. They're apprehended after our units helped them out of the water. We actually deployed a rope to get them out of the water, save their lives. One of them was wearing a ski mask, so clearly they're not here for any good purpose. What we don't know is, if you look at the video, you have to make your own determination. It looks like there's a third suspect up above these 2, and we don't get that person. Now, since they're here, the suspects being interviewed, they've indicated there were 5 people in the vehicle. So a fire rescue dive team did recover the 1 body. So we have 1 body recovered. We have 2 people swimming that we clearly see recovered, and 1 that looks like they're swimming, not recovered. The suspects are telling us there were 5 people. So here's the combination. There's either 2 people have drowned, in addition to the 1 we have, or 2 people got away, or 1 drowned and 1 got away. We're still out at the scene of the South Florida Freshwater Game Commission is out there now with side sonar, and they're looking for additional bodies. So here's a wrap-up of what we have. The interviews continue. Charges will be announced. The state attorney is here helping us. We have 2 in custody. One's 18 years old, male. One's 16-year-old, male. We have a deceased 17-year-old male from Boynton Beach. Of note, and you'll see it when we give you the route, in 6 minutes, this vehicle traveled 11 miles. So you can do the math. 6 minutes, went 11 miles. Now, since this occurred, and we're still taking reports, we've discovered 2 cars have been stolen from Martin County in that vicinity, and 1 car burglary. I assume we're going to find more. And I'll close with this. It was only by the grace of God that an innocent person wasn't killed. That vehicle went through that intersection, could easily have been triple digits. Had they T-boned somebody going east or west on 76, we'd have a whole different story. And with that, I'll stop and answer any questions that I can.
The vehicle was initially spotted on, or you guys initially learned the vehicle was on High Meadows Avenue, is that right?
High Meadows and, yes.
Whereabouts on High Meadows?
Towards Martin Highway. Yeah.
What are the individuals that you have in custody, the 18 and 16-year-olds, what did they say in terms of like what they were doing or why they were running, or did you say anything about
Yeah,
that?
the question is, what did the 2 in custody say they were doing here? They refused to be cooperative. The only really thing we've gotten out of them is there may be unaccounted for suspects. We may have 5 suspects instead of the 4 we initially thought, but they're not cooperating.
And it was a stolen vehicle out of Boynton Beach they were in?
Right, the question is, was a stolen vehicle? Yes, it was a stolen vehicle from Boynton Beach.
What kind of car was it?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Will. I have to, I'm trying to remember from the picture. You remember?
Mazda sedan.
Yeah, it's a Mazda sedan, an older sedan, a few years old.
So Sheriff, when you get the call from Boynton Beach that there's a stolen vehicle heading your way, when did you spot them, how did you spot them, and then you set back with the air?
Right, so your question is, first of all, we didn't get a call from Boynton Beach. We picked it up using our own devices. We have some technology we never talk about, but we became aware of the vehicle. A few minutes later, our aviation unit was overhead. So the timeline I gave you when I first started is when our units first became aware of it, and then subsequently within a moment or 2, I think 2 or 3 minutes, aviation picks up the vehicle. That's the way we do it. We find that if we detect a stolen vehicle, however we do it, it's better not to engage those blue lights because they will not stop. They don't stop anymore. And we get aviation overhead. We've been very successful between our technology, our stingers, our tire deflation devices, between the way we force cars into a pinch situation. We do this all the time, and most of the time we're able to get our suspects without anybody getting hurt.
And you didn't turn on the blue lights until they ran the intersection?
Right. Yeah, the question is, we didn't turn the blue lights till they ran the intersection. We let them go the whole time with just aviation. As we're setting up, we were getting ready. That stinger, a boxing in type technology, that's what we would have done. But when they turned west in the eastbound lane on Cove Road, our road patrol deputy, and I think correctly so, said that this is too bad. Let me see if I can get him to stop and to warn eastbound traffic that you got a westbound car coming straight at you. And they didn't stop. And he's immediately, you'll see it in the video. Everything is right there. He flips his blue lights on, realizes it's going to have no effect, and just turns the blue lights off.
Sheriff, how long do you keep up the search at this point if we're now past 12, 16 hours or so?
How long do we keep up the search for the body? We'll stay on it now. That's our dilemma. We don't know if there's a body or bodies at the bottom of that waterway. The current's very swift. And so there's alligators in there. We don't have any friends in the environment right now. Plus, we have unreliable suspects, so who knows? They could be lying to us. Maybe there was only 4. You look at the video yourself. We've debated whether, do we actually see a third person? If we do, it's very briefly. So did he some way disappear under the water and swim to shore without the helicopter seeing him? It's just hard. The other problem we run into, as soon as they got wet, the helicopter loses that heat image. So it gets real, you'll see it. It's very difficult.
So the deceased person, the 17-year-old, where was he found? In the car, outside the car?
The deceased person was found by fire rescue divers at their own peril, going into dark alligator-infested waters, and pull the victim out. It was too late by then. He was clearly deceased.
In the car?
In the car.
I know you said, just to clarify though, it's possible that there's at least 1 or 2 other people unaccounted for, whether they're
Yeah.
fleeing or deceased or hiding out. That's that kind of working
Yeah,
scenario.
Will's question is, the combinations are either there's 1 body in the water, 2 bodies in the water, or only 1 body that got out, or 2 bodies that got out, so.
But possibly 2 other individuals.
Yes, there's possibly 2 bodies at the bottom of that water, and there's possibly 2 suspects that were able to swim ashore without us seeing them. I think that's the least plausible, just because we were right there, our deputies were right there. You'll see it in the video, as soon as it crashes through the wood line, we're right there. There's deputies on both sides of the water, there's a helicopter overhead. They don't know the area. It's a mangrove area. Those of us from this area know mangroves. Yeah, my suspicion is that we're looking for 2 bodies or 1.
And the teams that you have in custody right now, you were saying something about other stolen vehicles or car burglaries?
Right, yeah, so we have the suspects in custody. We know they were in a stolen car. Since their apprehension, we have 2 stolen cars reported in that area and 1 car burglary. So we know from debriefing suspects in the past that what they'll do, they'll come in here with 2 crews, 2 cars, 4 suspects in each car, and they just drive around dropping suspects off and committing burglaries or committing auto thefts. So I think what we're thinking right now is there's 2 crews that hit us, because some of these burglaries occurred right sometime after this crash, wasn't them. So that's what it looks like to us.
Sheriff, last week, or not last week, a couple weeks ago, there was another reckless driving crash, April 19th up here in Stewart. This is not the first time we've seen a reckless driver endanger lives, especially coming from southern counties. What's the message to the community here about people coming through with stolen cars?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. We had a devastating crash last week with the city of Stewart, ended up in the fatality of an innocent. What's my message? My message to the community is this: we're doing the very best we can to limit as much as we can the danger to the community by these young people coming in here completely disregarding any sense of humanity and driving at unbelievable speeds. We have technology now. We have the aviation unit. We have policy in place. We have to triage every single one of these chases. We activate a blue light, they run. Then the question becomes, do we pursue or do we not pursue? If we don't pursue, we see here, they don't slow down anyway. If we do pursue, they may drive faster. If they drive faster and there's an innocent killed, we have to live with that, and we have to justify what we've done. If we don't pursue, it sends a message to the lawbreaker: go to Martin County, they won't chase you. We already have enough law enforcement agencies that don't engage, they don't chase, they go the other way. We can't do that in Martin County. We will lose control if we go down that path of no pursuits. But the ditch on the other side is, if you pursue for everything, no matter how reckless they are, you risk people's lives. So I will tell you this: at sometime after midnight this morning, my road deputies were making the most profoundly difficult decisions imaginable. While people today will sit home in the comfort of their air-conditioned house, have a hamburger, and watch this press conference and make judgments. And civil juries will make judgments. But I stand behind my deputies 100%, and I would have done exactly what they did under the circumstances.
And then yesterday, there was another reckless driving incident on the highway that came from Indian down to St. Lucie County. How big of a problem is reckless driving on the Treasure Coast right now?
How big of a problem is reckless driving? It's a phenomenally profound problem. These young people are stealing cars and going into neighboring communities. That's why we pushed so hard for the traveling burglary statute. And they're completely without any moral fiber whatsoever. They don't care one bit. And I'll tell you what, if someone asked me, how sympathetic am I to this drowning victim, I'll tell you this. I'm as sympathetic to him as he would have been to the nurse going to the hospital at night to work had he killed her. That's exactly how sympathetic I am.
Now, Sheriff, you said, I don't know if you can answer this, you said that they were speeding the whole time? What were they speeding if there was no one following them with a flashing light? They couldn't
Yeah,
see your air?
that's a good question. They were speeding the whole time. That's an understatement. They were flying. Do the math. They did those many miles. It looked like they were triple digit the entire time with no blue lights behind them. So they just drive with reckless abandon.
Do you know what's the name of the deceased individual from Boynton and the two others that are in custody?
Yeah, Will has asked me the question, what's the name? We can't release names now because we haven't done the next of kin. We're trying to. We're actively trying to in Boynton Beach. And then until we know exactly what charges we have, we do have one juvenile. And so the adult male will be able to release once we're done with the interviews and we know what we're making, what charges we'll have.
So Sheriff, is the procedure not to follow, not to turn on your blue lights, and then for you to make that judge, for each road patrol to make that judgment when they think it's necessary, or? is there-
Yeah, that's a good question. And your question is, on a case-by-case basis, is it up to the deputy? We have very, very detailed policy. We have a level 1 chase, we have a level 2 chase. They both have to do with the speeds and the crimes that occurred. So we treat auto theft as a property crime, knowing in the back of our heads, they didn't come in here wearing ski masks and a stolen car to get a late night soda pop. So we don't know when we activate those blue lights, so we do the very best we can. Those road deputies have some of the most difficult decisions in the world. And right now in Martin County, our community stands with us. I stand with my deputies. It's an impossible decision. Sometimes it's clear cut. A car will come here, there's a bolo, be on the lookout for, they just abducted and killed somebody. Well, then everybody understands the chase at that point. But then it moves down into, it was a burglary, but what was it, a burglary with a gun stolen? Was it a house burglary that was occupied? And sometimes we just don't know when we turn on those blue lights. So I'll say it again, we have to have a balanced approach. We have to protect the public as much as we can by being sensitive about the chases and the pursuits. But we also have to send a message. If you go to Martin County and those Martin County deputies get on you, it could end badly. As a matter of fact, it could end with you at the bottom of a river.
Can we get the chief to comment briefly about the challenges that your guys face going into the water in the middle of the night? I mean, the sheriff telling us this is 1 o'clock in the morning, it's pitch black anyway. How did you guys manage to do that?
Well, our divers, due to the quick action of the sheriff contacting fire rescue for the dive team, they were responding from the station. They dressed en route to this type of call. This incident is what we call a special operations type of diving, which means they just have no visibility. They do have the marine life, and as the sheriff mentioned, there's a lot of alligators in that water. They're trained for this type of diving, but we do this in relationship with the sheriff and other agencies involved, and we use technology and our divers in the water, but they have extensive training for this environment. But it is challenging because they have a hard time with the depth of the water. They have a hard time with what is in the water. And then with the technology that we use, we do have communications on the surface that can speak to the divers while they're underwater, and it gives them a little more guidance of what they need to look for and the area that they should be in. But it's something they really have a lot of extensive training for.
I just want to follow up on what the chief said. I'm not just saying because he's here. I'll chase a car all night. I'll crawl into a house knowing there's a burglar with a gun. I would not do what his men did this morning and go into alligator-infested water with a rip current. I mean, that's tough. And they do it to try to save someone's life. I mean, there could have been an air pocket up in the car. So my hat's off to them. Of course, they don't want to get in the car and chase, but I do. So.